you're a kid, not like the way you want to relate to your dad, or at least the way this kid wanted to relate to his dad. And so, I mean, they gave us something to really work with. And what wound up happening was that summer, when this boy was on summer break, Dad took him with him where he was going, which was probably someplace exotic. And, you know, he would get up to work at probably 4 or 5 in the morning, but he would have his son with him every morning. He actually paid his son as an employee. They worked together all summer, and they wound up, you know, really bonding. So that was, you know, something that would have never happened had we not had a child specialist. You know, other professionals that can be used, coaches. Coaches are therapists, but instead of doing therapy with the husband and the wife, instead of, you know, trying to figure out, you know, what traumas happened to them when they were children and how that's impacted who they are now, it's more about figuring out what's really important to me. You know, when I look back on this divorce 5 or 10 years from now, I'm going to have, what am I going to look at and say that really mattered? And what are the things that really aren't going to have mattered? And then once I connect with that, how do I communicate that, about that in a way that my spouse can understand? And as I referenced earlier, you can have financial people who, you know, might come in to value businesses. I mean, typically if a case goes to court, each side has their own experts, and those experts are coming to court to advocate for one side or the other. So you get a war of experts, and that's very expensive, and it generates more heat than light. But if you find one expert that both people trust to come in and value a business, let's say, or figure out how much spousal maintenance is appropriate or how best to structure it, or you know, simply how to take the assets, the finite assets that people have, and buy them in a way that's going to work for everyone, that can be really, really helpful.
This is like one of the last questions on it. I don't know if we're getting shorter on time. I want to make sure I ask this question because I've really been able to discuss this with a guest to that point, because you've said you've been divorced twice.
Right.
And sort of interesting if the perspectives you can share, and some of this has led you to divorce with love, but sharing some of a lot of people don't talk to people who've gone through it, and things that you'd want to share with us, or
Absolutely.
How this has affected you and as an attorney and,
Right.
and as a divorce attorney and mediator and collaborative attorney.
Right. Well, you know, I mean, my divorce was so, my first divorce, the one that I went through during law school, I mean, basically what happened was I came to Tucson to go to law school. Soon after that, I found out my wife was having an affair, so I moved out of the house. She served me with divorce papers during finals first semester. You know, the rest of that year of law school was just this excruciating battle over, you know, everything. The next year, we relitigated custody. Finally, I won custody, and in the third year, I was on law review, you know, holding down my studies and raising 2 kids on my own. So, you know, I got to see what it's like for people.
You saw the worst side of it, it sounds like.
I saw the worst side, and one of the things I saw was how much of a difference attorneys could make for people who are going through divorce. I mean, for better or for worse. They could make the case much, much more horrendous, or they could make it much more tolerable. I had a wonderful attorney who's now actually a judge, who, you know, really held my hand and did her best to make it as I mean, she cared. That made all the difference in the world. I mean, so I got out of law school, and I decided I would try this kind of law. And then what I discovered over time was, because I was doing, you know, traditional litigation at the time, was that a lot of times, you know, I felt like I was making it worse rather than better. And so that's when I discovered, you know, fortunately, collaborative divorce, mediation. I really prefer those because I think there's much more of an opportunity to help people. In my own life, I mean, my first wife had some mental illness. She eventually disappeared, and my children grew up without a mom. Had there been something like collaborative divorce around, then maybe it would have been possible to create enough of a container for her, you know, with a therapist.
Help her a little bit more.
You know, they might have stayed in my children's life. Maybe not. Maybe it wouldn't have worked. But, I mean, even in a case that difficult, there's a possibility that we could have done something much, much better. You know, my second divorce was extremely amicable. It was exactly the opposite. It was the difference between being in heaven or hell. And often when I'm helping people through a divorce, if it's a mediation or a collaborative divorce, you know, I'll kind of feel as we're sitting around the table like we're kind of up in the clouds, even if we're dealing with conflict. You know, there's good faith. We're going to make it through. We're going to, there's that confidence.
Why? It's interesting. I mean, having the experience of having the 2 different types of divorces, why were they different?
Well, I mean, the second woman was not mentally ill, for one. we both wanted to divorce, with love. We didn't have any children together. However, I mean, normally that's one of the things that really draws people in because they have a lot of common ground. But I mean, I think for us, our memories were important. The fact that we cared about each other, we didn't want to lose that. And we certainly, and I, as a divorce attorney, didn't want to go through a year or 2 of hell, and all the, the costs, both financial and emotional. If we had to be divorced, and in this case it was her choice, not mine, I wanted to make sure that we were doing it in a way that really, that was really good for both of us.
One last time, let me put you're on the screen again so we can just get your information, as you can always go to our website too, and we're getting a little bit short on time. Once again, it's interesting, right? You keep cueing me on my questions, which I'm going to do that one. One of the things I wanted to ask you too about is what about the cost of Divorce with Love? Is it more expensive, less expensive?
Right. Well, there's no hard and fast, but typically less. I mean, generally speaking, that progression that we spoke of, sitting down across the kitchen table is going to be the least expensive, involve the least amount of professional involvement. Mediation is the next most cost effective, and certainly very, very effective in terms of helping people, keeping them on track. Collaborative is typically, the next most expensive because you're putting more resources, creating a stronger container, but it costs more. And then traditional litigation is, certainly if you have a highly litigated case, it's going to get very, very expensive.
So really, it's still following the same track of doing things on that one. What sort of things? Some of this I think you've touched on, but what are some of the things that people talk about in Divorce with Love, and how are they different than they would be once again in a traditional divorce or traditional case?
Well, certainly we talk about all the things you talk about in a traditional case. We talk about division of property, division of debts, potential for spousal maintenance. If there's going to be spousal maintenance, how much, for how long? We talk about custody, we talk about child support, we talk about parenting time, we talk about everything. In addition, though, we're also talking about feelings and needs. We're making sure that everything that needs to come out comes out, so that people can restore the relationship. We also talk about the dynamics of divorce, because one of the things that happens very often is the people who really mean well, our friends and relatives, the people who
I know
care
where
about us,
you're going.
Yeah, they'll steer us in exactly the wrong direction. And typically, one person reacts out of their fear in a way that causes the other person to have fear, and then that person reacts in a way that causes the first person to have more fear, and suddenly you just get into this escalating cycle of fear. So we talk about that dynamic so that people can learn not to do that, so that they can learn to avoid the pitfalls.
We've got just about a minute left. If people want more information about Divorce with Love, Divorcing with Love. Although I keep thinking of the cartoon that I saw where the little lady says, the first time I'm married for love, next time I'm marrying for money. But what if they want more information about Divorce with Love? What can they do?
Yeah, they're welcome to call me, 628-8900. They're welcome to find me on the web, email me. Or they can just come to the workshop. It's, as I said, 1427 East Broadway, 7 o'clock Tuesday nights.
Roy, thank you very much. It's been a very fascinating conversation about that. If you have questions, you can always go to our website. And you've been watching Divorce TV with Wally Marcus, and our special guest, Roy Martin, has been talking about Divorce with Love, which is sort of an unusual topic and one you won't hear about other places. So this is a place to watch for it. And once again, thank you for watching us, and we look forward to you seeing shows in the future. And it's been Divorce TV. You can watch all our shows on YouTube.